Welcome back to the Retrospective.
In this episode, we'll hear from Matt Graff and Alan Sisto, and we're in Pelargir.
Welcome, everybody. Today, we are in Pelargir, and I am joined by Maggie, as always, and Matt Graff and Alan Sisto. And we're going to talk about Pelargir and the Númenórean intervention thereunto. So...
This has been an interesting one, right? So a big old shift from location and character and starting anew for quite a few people and introducing a few other new characters. So it's not something we've also spent a ton of time on analysis-wise with Rings and Realms. So I'm excited to be able to talk about it a bit more with you guys. One of the themes we wanted to kind of start with is the camaraderie that we see throughout the people of Pelargir.
It was from the beginning with, I'm thinking of the time in Pelargir, right? The first scenes with Theo and Arondir at the beginning, and kind of the and Isildur arriving in, and Isildur and Theo's relationship through episode 4 and episode 8 as well. Though, by the way, on the side, I would say you talked about us not having spent much time here. Of course, neither did the show.
And I think
which is the. I mean, and I've got to say, I mean, obviously, the Harfoots as a subset of the Rune plot received decreasing time as the season went on. This plot line
from the get-go
takes the cake, I think, as the least. It's only in 3 episodes, if I recall, right? 3,
and not
4
for long within those
8.
3 episodes.
No. Yeah, it's not even, they don't even,
it's really just there to remind us that it exists, right? So
in a lot of ways. So it's that's one, I think, kind of important context to note, that it's not that there is nothing to discuss there, but in some ways, not all, but in some ways, I felt that it serves to emphasize and pick up on other things rather than really. There are very few, elements that it's carrying through this season.
Correct.
It's sort of because of its brief and secondary nature.
But they're clearly setting it up for a lot more next season.
I think so. Yes, I think so. Well. Yeah. Yes, in the sense of there's plot that needs to be accomplished. Right.
Yes.
The Númenórean,
the expansion,
depredations
and the imperialism
and everything,
colonialism,
and it's going to have an impact on the Númenórean story. And yet,
I don't know if it'll be a big one though.
That's it.
Yeah.
How much time are we going to actually spend with it? Yeah.
But we're going to see some other threads there. I mean, we did see the Ents briefly. I don't think that's the last we're going to see of them.
No, definitely not.
I think certainly Arondir is going to prove to be a foil. I know we're probably getting ahead of ourselves because we're basically talking about the end of that plot line.
Right.
But clearly Arondir is going to be a foil to Kemen, and the Ents are going to be involved.
Arondir's in Linden now.
Yes, that's true. Or he's in Rivendell.
Rivendell.
But he's got to end up back there. I mean, the whole protecting the trees thing.
Probably going to check in.
Maybe.
But yeah.
Well, we know that's only like a 5-minute walk.
Everything's a 5-minute. That's right.
So bringing it back.
Right. Sorry.
No, it's all right. It's what we do. Yeah. But I mean, we wanted to start with camaraderie. But what were your thoughts specifically about that contextually, and then bringing it in?
One of the things, especially given the relatively short time we spend among the Pelargir folks, it seems to me that one of the things, if we think about what they wanted to cement and maintain and set up, it seemed to be about relationships. Right. Let's think about what is the next stage of Arondir and Theo's relationship after the death of Bronwyn. Isildur comes back, and what is the relationship that Isildur develops with both Arondir and with Theo, and then with Estrid coming in as well, and how does that sort of influence that constellation, and how does that help us to understand? More than anything, to me, that seemed to kind of map onto the relations of different, elements of humans in, in that area in the Southlands. But again, it was all. I think there's a lot of our focus is drawn towards the relationship among them, and camaraderie, the traveling together, the shift towards from the Theo's frostiness at the beginning with Arondir to clearly the restoration, of affection there towards the end. The increasing camaraderie between Isildur and Arondir initially, Isildur and Theo thereafter. These are the things, it seems to me, when I just simply do a really superficial look, survey of what are the story beats that happen, in this plot line. That's the first preliminary pattern that I see is, that if there's something they want us to maintain, it's the idea of these developing personal relationships.
Guys, thoughts on camaraderie or the relationships that we're building here?
Yeah, I think of the relationships we saw, I think the one I'm most intrigued by is Theo and Isildur.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That for sure.
I think especially, and I've done this before, where I think a character is going to be turned out to be somebody and it doesn't become the thing. So at the risk of doing that yet again, I think Theo as King of the Dead with a friendship with Isildur,
love that,
makes that very interesting to me.
It's going to be a real heartbreaking scene, right? I got your back. I'm going to don't worry, I got you, man. And then something's going to happen, whatever that something is, that's going to keep him from doing that, and he's going to break that word, and Isildur is going to curse him.
But for that to work, we have to have this relationship make sense from the start.
Right.
So that's a definite peak of why we'd be.
I can very easily see this playing out where they've started this friendship. Theo, gets disenfranchised with the whole idea of Númenóreans because of jerk-face Kemen showing up.
Yeah.
And so it's on shaky ground, but it's like, oh, I like Isildur, and there's still more time. Presumably that this relationship would develop, and he makes a choice, and maybe it's a, kind of gray area choice where it's not like outright betrayal. He's trying to look out for his people, but he does break his word to Isildur.
Right.
Like, there's some fertile ground to play with.
It'll be interesting how they play that, because the timeline. I mean, if we're talking about the Last Alliance when he doesn't show up, that's a ways from now.
But fortunately, because not only is Theo himself still quite young, but he's also still quite new to any sort of leadership position.
Right. Yeah.
So I like the passage of time.
Pelargir.
That's exactly. Let him become the lord of the people, and
and the actor is going to
also
correct.
age. Yes, exactly.
He's already like 8 inches taller than he was 2 years ago. It's like, man, that kid's grown.
Yes. But and of course the other element of this, right, is again the story of the King of the Dead that we know is of their return. They're returning to the worship of Sauron during and I can't help but remember Theo, the King of the Southlands, right? Like that's, and at the same time, so how is Sauron going to try to play upon that? Right. Yeah. In the in season 3, now that he's checked Eregion, off his list, how is he going to, taking the 9 among men, how is he going to interact with it? How is he going to play on that? And then, of course, at the same time, that whole idea of the men of the mountain, right, who had sworn the oath to Isildur, had originally been sworn to Sauron, and then returned to that loyalty. And like, we've got the folks with the brand of Mordor on the backs of their necks there, who will be presumably among them. So there are a lot of ways in which that story is set up for this. I also love that theory. I mean, I think that would be delightful. It's hard to imagine. Again, it's another one of those things that you look at this this gap that is asking to be filled in, and it's really hard to imagine JD and Patrick ignoring it, right, and leaving it. I gotta think we're gonna get the King of the Dead.
I would think.
But what I also liked about that relationship was taking the lore out of it. You have a really interesting scene with this young impressionable kid who's just lost his mother, doesn't really have a home or an identity. He thinks he's supposed to be healer, but he's not sure. And all of a sudden, he has this kind of alliance and attachment to Isildur, and
it's like a big brother,
right? And that kind of aspirational relationship. He's like, okay, I'm here for that. Let's see where he goes with that.
By the way, on the subject of book callbacks that I loved, did you notice Theo trying to figure out whether he's going to be a soldier or a healer?
Yeah.
while standing in Ithilien. Right?
Yes.
I mean, like that's really interesting. Actually, it's a very subtle kind of overlay.
Yeah.
And so I was that struck me all of a sudden when I was rewatching like that episode 3, I think, when they first come in.
Yeah.
And Isildur is like, "You're a great healer," and he's like, I don't remember what he's like, but he's basically, I'm kind of plus minus on the whole whether I'm going to be a healer thing.
Yeah.
Like he doesn't embrace that identity, even though Isildur comes back to it again in episode 8, right? But he's
a good healer. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But he's still Theo is not confident that he's going to embrace that. So that kind of fun anticipation of, or not, it's not an anticipation of Eowyn's character specifically, but that the invocation of that dichotomy, the warrior, the warrior healer.
That's
dichotomy.
even an Aragorn dichotomy too.
Yes.
I mean, it calls to a lot of different characters.
Right. Exactly. Aragorn would tell you, Theo, you don't have to choose. Be both.
Right.
Yeah.
Why not both?
Why not?
Exactly. But yeah. So of course, one of the other things that I think then complicates this story a little bit is that it's not just. I believe it is going to be. I mean, everything that we see, I think, points to. You know what did it for me with the King of the Dead? When he and Arondir, when he's like, "I have promises to keep," and I was like, "Oh man,
yeah,
you might,
but do you? Yeah,
but will you?
But will you?
Exactly,
yes.
right. Anyway, so I too was thinking that, and I'm feeling like I was picking that up.
Yeah.
Who knows? Maybe we're right or wrong. But the issue is there's more. If you think about the show and the characters that we know in the show, almost every character in the show, almost every group of people in the show is like representative in some sense, right?
Yeah.
They're representing a population. They're kind of standing in for a population, right? And the Southlanders originally, the people of Pelargir, the Lowmen, in general, this is the only group of non-Numenorian humans in Middle-earth. Again, apart from the little introduction, the tease and rune of the Gaudrim, these are the only humans, the only men of Middle-earth that we know. They represent that entire aggregate population at this point. And so what does that suggest about their role moving forward? Like what, again, agreed about the Kings of the Dead. Are there other stories, other elements? Like when we were talking about Numenor, I was talking about how if you kind of take the elements of the Numenorian story from Tolkien and make a checklist out of it, I believe we're not going to see everything exactly as it is in the book because of compression and change, but I believe you would check off almost everything on that checklist if you just say, like, here's an element that I'm looking for. Here's another element of the story. What are elements of the humans in Middle-earth story that we feel, again, in addition, other than the Oathbreakers, what is the situation of the men of Middle-earth that we need to see, or that we
need
would
to see
expect
some
to
foundations for now?
Yeah.
Right.
The lot of men was unhappy.
Yeah, the lot of men was unhappy. I mean, I'm thinking, that misery. I don't think we're going to end up with any sort of Northmen, any sort of pre
right.
Rohirrim.
Yeah.
Well, not even pre-Aotheod, right? I don't think we're going to get
Aotheod,
the
pre-Aotheod.
Basically the House of Hodor living in Ravani, and I don't think we're going to get to them, or we would have seen them by now. So we're talking strictly about the low men. What? Maybe just how they're going to view that colonization. I mean, I would love to see if just maybe by off chance one of the low men's names is Hazad from Tal Elmar. I mean, a really super deep dive name that would tell us they've been reading stuff. I don't think we're going to get that, but the idea of seeing that Numenor, the Numenorian colonization and deforestation from the perspective of an inhabitant of Middle Earth.
Right.
Yeah. These are supposed to be the high men.
Yes.
And look at what they're doing.
Yeah.
Clearly very high.
Yeah. The sort of victims and punching bags of the Numenorians.
Yes.
We've already clearly been set up to check that one off.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. I do wish we got more, and again, this is a symptom, I think, of the time compression, that we don't get that relationship. We know with Harad specifically, like they start off as being buddies and like they're teaching them stuff and things are cool and so we're kind of just
teach
skipping
them how to plant
straight
corn and
like,
do all this stuff,
and then we're just skipping to the oppression stuff. Yeah.
well, making a short stop past benefactor. Like Muriel's intervention
yes.
is Numenorians coming to the rescue, being the benefactors of
for a hot
people.
second.
Again, like if on that checklist is Numenorians come first as benefactors to the low men of Middle-earth, we can check that box. We got that in season 1, right? Not, the whole. I know we didn't get the whole story, but it's not the Numenor show, right?
No, I understand.
But again, that element of story
is there.
Is there.
You can check it off in a very rudimentary way.
Very perfunctory sort of.
That has been
that technically
that element of the relationship has been acknowledged.
In some, it's been acknowledged. Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
I can get on with that.
Enough to establish that the shift. Right. From
shift in policy
from benefactor to exploitation.
And of the faithful and how they would treat the men of Middle-earth versus how the Kingsmen, how our Federzone is going to treat the men of Middle-earth.
Exactly. And that's what I mean by checking it off the list. Right. Not like, are they telling the full same story?
Did they adapt it versus did they acknowledge its existence?
Exactly. Are they using the same kind of shape even if in small
miniature?
Miniature. Because miniature is what they got with the not just with the compression in the sense of doing it within a generation, but with a compression in the sense of spending however many minutes total they have.
I mean, you've got a total of maybe 40 hours of content for the entire show.
Right.
So you're going to spend maybe 6 or 7 hours total of it in Numenor.
Total.
Can you tell the Numenorians in over 5 years?
The entire Numenorian story. Yes.
No, you can't tell that story in 6 or 7 hours, but you can try.
I know where we could pick up a few more hours from.
Yeah, I do too.
There it is.
There it
18 minutes, guys. 18 minutes.
I made it 18 minutes that time.
That was your worst performance of the day, actually. Yeah, very good. But anyway, okay, no. More things on the people of the Men of Middle-earth checklist. So I have another one. The non-Numenorian Gondorian population. Which is an interesting dynamic in the book, right? It's a lot of people. I mean, it was years. I remember when I realized I'd always just associated like Gondor is 100% Numenorian, right? That was in my brain in my first readings of in high school and stuff. I was like Gondor is Numenorian. That's what it is. It was only much later that I was like, no, actually.
As you read the chapter of Minas Tirith and you see these armies coming in, and each of them are described very differently. In physiology, in everything, in culture.
And then of course you read, more both in his drafts of the story. That was very much not how he conceived it. As uniformly Numenorian. I mean, And then again, there are lots of ways that this came. So over time, my own conception of in what sense Gondor was Numenorian shifted.
Wouldn't it be more Numenorian at this stage? I'm sorry to interrupt, but I mean, at this point in time, right after the downfall, which still hasn't even happened yet, but after the downfall, I mean, I'm thinking, by the Third Age and the intermingling with the Northmen and all the whole the kin strife. But what about at the time of?
But I would think the intermingling would begin. Well, that's the question. We don't know what they're going to do in the show.
That's
right?
True.
So that's not, in a sense, it's not on the same checklist of like things I expect them to do, but it is a role that is open. To the men
blank
of the
they can fill
Southlands.
for sure.
I think Isildur is looking to intermingle.
I was going to suggest that we have certain evidence that intermingling with the native population might come up.
It might.
That's such a diplomatic way to say it.
Mingling with the native population.
He's ready to hang.
He's ready.
He's like, hey, we have indoor plumbing in Numenor.
Come on.
That is a fabulous pickup line.
Great.
Yeah, isn't it?
Hey, have you ever seen indoor plumbing?
Yeah.
Come to my place.
Come
to my place.
Oh God. Isildur's pickup lines. Not a segment I need to explore.
Not good.
I guess that kind of segues to the relationship with Astrid.
Do we
want to explore that a little bit?
Wait, hang on a second.
Yeah.
I want to make sure. Are there any other roles
that the men of
Middle-earth?
I think for the sake of this, we have to exclude like the Corsairs and the Haradrim,
even the Dunlendings as well.
I would like to see them too, but I think that categorically, like if we ask like where in the show are they kind of conceptually represented, I think in the Rune story.
Yeah, the Easterlings.
Right? As like peoples who are in the future going to be dominated by Sauron, and that's sort of the issue.
Who will be enemies of Gondor?
I think
for sure.
the people of Rune are going to be representatives of that dynamic. Whereas the Southlanders are, yes, King of the Dead, yes, non-Numenorian Gondorians, and what was the other one we said? I've forgotten already. We said another one. Blanking. Anyway, that other really smart thing that we said a little while ago.
Yes.
But are
Just take it back 20 seconds.
This is the last one we're recording today, so
Can you tell?
No, but Anyway, so are there other stories that we would expect either to see or to set up or to anticipate about non-Numenorian humans in Middle Earth that we might suspect?
Yeah, I don't think they'll even get into the Dunlendings because
I don't think they're
we're
getting into the Dunlendings. They're sure not going to get into the Druidine, which I would love to see, but they're not. We're not going to. I
don't think we are.
Khan.
Yeah.
I mean, or his ancestors, which is a shame. That would be fantastic.
Well, it's already pretty much too late to do one of the things that I was hoping for, which was to see a Druidon in Numenor.
Yeah.
It's not too late for dancing bears,
Correct.
JD and Patrick. I'm just
It
saying.
isn't even too late for the Druidine in Numenor.
I don't think they have the
Not
rights
totally.
to
But by this
dancing
point,
bears.
they have left the
come
island,
on.
right?
Come on, like
What?
if a bear dances on screen,
Yeah.
I don't think you can
Lawsuit,
claim rights
baby.
to that, unless they
Yeah.
name it.
lawsuit, baby.
Lawsuit.
That's right. We're coming for your
That's
dancing
nature
bears.
of Middle Earth.
Right.
Get out of here. Yeah.
I don't think they have
fighting
exclusive
bears.
rights to dancing bears. I feel like that's a
it's
blanket.
going to be hard to
Well,
trademark
clearly,
dancing bears.
They were dancing
Yeah.
the tango in Tolkien, so we're going to have them dance the waltz, and that'll protect us from...
We're actually adapting Barnum and Bailey there.
Actually.
So it's,
Yeah.
You can
this is
cite
good.
other. I mean,
Yeah.
it's not the only examples of dancing bears
Correct.
in all of history. So anyway,
Yeah. We're not going to see that, sadly.
but probably not.
Yeah.
I'm still not.
But
Giving
the
up hope.
Druidine, that would have been fantastic.
The Druidine
to
would have
see.
been fantastic.
Yeah.
The Druidine in Numenor.
In Numenor.
They'd already
yeah.
be leaving. They'd be
They
off
would.
the
They'd
island
be pretty
already.
much gone
Yeah.
by now.
Like,
The last
Season
one would be
one.
gone.
Bad news.
We would.
Yeah.
In fact, like that, I would have accepted like one of those harbor shots.
Yes.
Like Galadriel coming in the harbor
And
just
the
to see a boat
Druidine
going
saying,
out,
Just
"Bye."
right? With
Peace out, man.
With like these like native figures on it. See ya.
This ain't gonna end well. We're out.
Right. Yeah. No, that would have been awesome. Actually, like a really deep Easter
Wouldn't
egg.
it?
Yeah.
I'm with you on that. That would have been
Anyway,
fantastic.
okay.
All right.
Okay. But so let's go ahead and move on to Estrid. I
Okay,
think
yeah.
I just wanted to make sure because I want to make sure that in my head I don't pigeonhole
Right.
Theo and because
The
there
men
are
of Pelargir
several
and the
roles. There are a couple
non-Numenorian.
jobs in the narrative that potentially they play. I want to make sure we're not overlooking them.
And I find it really useful because we consistently talk about these gaps that better pay off, right? Like
Yes.
we
Right.
kind of throw it out there jokingly, but like, why are you taking the time to introduce this thing if you're not
Yeah.
going to wrap that up cleanly? So
Yes.
I like hearing about all the possibilities because between our heads, we might be able to say, actually, I can see.
Yeah.
So I think there's real benefit to doing that with Rings
Yeah.
and Realms crew.
Yeah.
But let's shift
Okay.
a little bit.
Estrid.
Let's
Back to
talk
back to the
about Estrid.
intermingling
Wow, talk about
question.
shifting,
Yeah.
though.
But-
I mean, that's
Yes.
the thing with Estrid.
And not
It's-
just
it's
a
constant
relationship
shift.
too. Like I want to talk about like a little bit about Estrid, but just the concept of trust amongst
Yes.
this whole community.
Yes.
But obviously, it's kind of the clearest, I think, with her. But
There is
let's
no
start
honor
by
among
talking
thieves,
with
right?
yeah.
I mean, these are
except they're
But there
kind of
is.
seem
Right,
to be
that's the
right.
point,
Exactly.
yeah.
That's the So I said before when I was kind of doing my initial sort of summary that this segment, this storyline does not carry much weight. It kind of amplifies or echoes some others,
Right.
except one, and that's the forgiveness theme.
Yes.
The
Yeah.
forgiveness theme really takes shape here,
Yes, it does.
and then has its echoes. I mean, Elrond saying "Forgive me" to Galadriel in a tent prior. I don't remember anything that happens after that, but he says
Yeah,
"Forgive
well,
me"
we
to
do.
Galadriel.
I'm sure. I'm sorry. Can you remind? No.
Yeah, no, exactly. Anyway,
Please
the
don't.
point is,
Please,
No.
please don't.
when
I don't
Galadriel
want to
says
talk about it
when
again.
Elrond says "Forgive me" to Galadriel,
Or the audience.
it
He
would
might
not
said
have
the
hit me nearly as hard as it did if that would not have struck me as so significant if we hadn't had the Pelargir plot and
That's
the
fair.
With the
prominence
forgiveness,
of
yeah.
forgiveness
Okay.
Yeah,
in
yeah.
advance. And did you notice what has happened between episode 4 and episode 8? The wild men now live in Pelargir.
Yeah.
And Hagen, the unfortunate fiance, right, rules half the people of Pelargir, presumably the half with brands on the backs of
Yeah.
their necks, right? Who used to be like screened at the gate,
right,
to make sure they didn't come in. So there's that one little reference which like speaks of a lot of diplomacy that has happened between episode 4 and episode 8. And what has happened is forgiveness, right? Estrid's question, is there forgiveness for someone like me? The answer has been yes, there is. Forgiveness has happened. Now we all have Entwife flowers in our hair. So like now, yes, we can forgive. And that's where it's left. Obviously, there are problems coming, right? Yeah. I mean, apart from Theo, now our representative Lowmen, right? Our representative Southlanders are now Estrid and Hagen, and that's a problem.
That is.
There are problems there.
Yeah,
That does not look like future peace and happiness, right? As represented by their relationship as we see it at the end of the season. But anyway, so that one theme, I think is extremely important, and Estrid is the catalyst of that.
Agreed.
Yeah.
I was giving space in case anyone wanted to comment on that. I guess not. All right.
No, I mean, I think you said really all that can be said on that. That is sort of a mic drop moment.
But I think one of the things with Estrid and that forgiveness moment is it is a very human moment.
It is.
And having kind of a smaller scale evidence of forgiveness makes the bigger scale this could impact Middle Earth hit harder. So there's even just that kind of concept of insular and big picture.
So to raise a topic that I haven't thought about in a long time, kissing.
No.
Is this a kissing show?
This became a kissing show.
Okay, yeah, actually did.
Though with almost 0%, how many unquestionably good kisses, like kisses for which we are supposed to react with unquestioned approval, have happened in this show? Romantic kisses to which we are like, hooray!
Yeah,
right.
Well, there's Isildur and Estrid.
Isildur and Estrid, and
no,
Dorn and Disa.
Wholly disagree.
You were just
Isildur
waiting
and
for that.
Estrid is a horrible kiss.
Okay,
Totally
That's
disagree.
the one you think is horrible.
That's what you're setting us up for?
It's the second most horrible kiss in the show.
Okay.
There we go.
Okay, there we go.
Okay. Well, out of the 3 kisses, sure. I'm going to put Dorn and Disa.
Why is it a horrible kiss?
She is betrothed. She has sworn an oath.
But also
the
thinks
house
he's
made her feel sick.
dead. And
that's a problem.
In the words of
Sometimes-
Michael Scott, BFD, engaged ain't married. You know?
That's true in our society. That's not true there.
Yeah.
And in addition, who are we talking about?
Yeah.
Some of the people standing there are going to be living in the paths of the dead for the next few centuries,
including Hagen.
Oath-breaking
the once in
is
future
important
fiance.
in this context.
That's true.
That is true.
So no, like yes, though the passion, the sexual tension, it's
I mean, it was
not
one
okay.
thing when she thought he was dead, but once it was clear he was actually not dead,
which I think we can confirm.
Yeah.
I mean, he looks a little.
He's a shady guy.
He's a shady guy. Like, but I mean, no, like I'm not saying it's not a problem. I'm not saying, and I'm certainly not saying that I don't have and that we're not invited to have sympathy, and that their situation is in some ways tragic.
Right.
The tragedy of it was clear from that first moment. Right?
Yeah.
When they were about to kiss the first time, which I would have been cool with.
And then Hagen shows up.
And then the husband shows up and it's like, well, thank you. The end.
At that point,
not
it
the
needs to
end
be
because
done.
I expect he's going to die a horrible death and then we'll be okay. But for now, it's not okay. It's not okay.
He'll die a horrible death.
Yeah, well, I mean, do you disagree?
Well, of course he'll die a horrible death at some point.
They all die horrible deaths in the Second Age.
Yeah, exactly. There are no pleasant deaths.
Nazgul or dead. Those are your choices. Well, Nazgul.
Roll for initiative. Yeah.
I was going to say Nazgul, dead, or Oathbreaker, but technically death is a prerequisite. So you're fine.
Yeah, that's true.
I've lost the plot of how we got from trust to kissing to this.
Estrid.
Right.
That's how we got there.
Okay, all
So
right.
yeah, no, I think it's JD.
That's fair.
It's
That's
deep.
fair.
It's problematic. And again, I'm not saying I don't approve of the relationship. I'm not trying to be like the fuddy-duddy here.
This isn't like the Dunedain of the South who were all upset when he came down with a Northman wife. Like, let him go back where he came from.
Right. Yeah. No.
It's not
that. This is not a This is not like a xenophobic issue. Right.
This is an oath breaking.
This is an oath breaking issue in a conspicuous oath breaking location.
That's a very valid point.
And again, like that, her feelings. Cool.
Totally
fine.
valid, right.
Like her relationship with Hagen.
But her promise.
Troublesome. But she has a promise. And you know what often happens in Tolkien? People swear oaths which become super uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And that's like, it's a small scale version of that. Right. I mean, this is not, the allegiance of nations we're talking about. But actually, it's something that is in its scale quite like the allegiance of nations.
But in the same example of the forgiveness going into the bigger picture against the later forgiveness we see, same thing. Small scale oath breaking, big deal when we can compare it to a big scale oath breaking.
Here's the other reason that I felt really confident. When they kissed at first, I was like, ooh, I was really uncomfortable. Because I'm like,
Hagen's going to walk in.
I'm like, I'm really hoping I'm not supposed to be cheering right now. Because I'm not cheering right now. Okay. And are they wanting me to, but I was trying to suspend, I'm like, maybe it's just me, maybe I've got issues and I'm like a little bit, whatever. But then Isildur's performance after that towards her.
Yes.
He is horrible to Estrid after that. She does not consent to come with him.
No.
And he shames her in public, in front of her husband and everyone else. He pulls her out to stand alone. She doesn't come to him.
No.
She stands alone in front of everyone, and he's like, I want to take her with me. And when Kemen...
I feel like Matt has feelings here.
No, I don't think that the show communicates any of, like, what...
What do you think about what I was like that scene?
Yeah,
that
no,
really
that's what I'm saying.
Scene.
Like what you're saying, where it's like a public shaming. I don't think the show portrays it like that. Well, it doesn't convey that emotionally.
I think the blocking does.
I'd have to rewatch the scene.
Okay,
I don't remember, to be honest. So
I mean, it's definitely an awkward position because her fiance is right there.
Yeah. So brief summary, because I was watching this because again I was like, I don't want to just.
Make an assumption,
have and project my own
And I think I was cringing
reaction.
about the whole relationship in general. So to be honest, I didn't pay that close attention to
that
because I didn't think that should have happened.
I was
She's
really interested in the way that they
honest.
set up. So Isildur comes forward, and he says, he looks back over his shoulder where she is, and he says, I want to bring one more with me. Right. And he calls her forward. She steps out of the crowd, but is well behind him. She does not come to his side.
She does not stand right next to him.
And Hagen is right there, like quite surprised, right?
I built you a house.
And then Kemen comes and stands between them,
jerk face.
And Hagen comes and stands near Kemen, and Isildur and Estrid are she doesn't come to him. They're very far apart, but he's already like the visuals. He's already left her behind. She's behind him. And she doesn't come. And then Kemen comes in between them as he is interdicting it, right? And saying she can't come. And then Hagen comes and stands right next to Kemen between Isildur and Estrid. The whole time she does and says nothing but stand there looking really sheepish and uncomfortable while everyone stares at her.
I hope it's not patronizing how proud of you I am right now. That you did all that. Good job. But I can see how you would absolutely read it if that was, I mean, again, I can't remember it from the scene, but where they are positioned is a big deal. So if you're already aware of the oath breaking being a big problem, I wasn't, so like we're not going to switch on to that. But if it is something you're already aware of, you're going to be looking for the symbols. You're going to be seeing the clues, and they're planting those clues if that's what we're taking from that.
The non-consensual element
of
the kiss was consensual.
Oh, very much.
Not trying to pretend the kiss wasn't consensual.
Right.
She's into him.
Yeah,
that's clear.
Yeah.
And her being into him has had a seriously negative impact on her relationship with her husband.
Sure.
Right? Clearly.
Weirdly, he's not thrilled with this.
Absolutely, yes. But he's even in the house before they go out. Yeah. He says, come with me, and she doesn't say yes.
Correct.
Despite the fact she has not given her consent, he calls her out in front of everyone, and she doesn't join him and carries on not giving her consent and just letting everything be awkward. Kemen's denial felt almost like a relief. When Kemen comes in and is like, no lawmen, and I was like, whew, thank you, Kemen. Did I just say that? Holy cow. That must have been really awkward if a Kemen intervention was better. Anyway, that's... Yeah.
As Isildur left too, you talked about forgiveness and Estrid. Did you saw Hagen reach out and take her hand?
Yes.
I thought that was another symbol of forgiveness.
Yes. His reaching out to her. Yes.
Yeah.
Did she grab his hand though?
No.
I don't think
She didn't push him away, but
she didn't take his hand back.
Right.
That was like as a hand clasp, it was really awkward.
Yes.
But I agree, the gesture came from
He
Hagen.
reached out to her.
Yeah.
He
Was surprisingly chill through the whole situation.
Yeah.
Like,
he's like, well,
I thought more of him in that moment than I had at any other time.
100%.
I was like, one could understand freaking out a great deal more than
he didn't look like he wanted to punch Isildur, which
right?
I would have understood.
Or be
if
mad
he
at
did.
Estrid, which also you can understand.
Yeah.
I mean, Anyway,
so
either of those things.
Big
could happen.
picture. What was the purpose of that entire exchange? Yes, we have that small moment of forgiveness. We have the notion that Isildur might be interested in a relationship. What other things do you think that relationship and that bond? What was the purpose of that?
If we follow the lines of like representation, again, like people tending to represent populations, as you implied before, Estrid and Isildur seems to be the pilot project of our Númenórean integration into the Proto-Gondorian population, right? And if that is the foundation of it,
yeah, I actually don't see it going there. I'm sort of hoping that they do stick with this idea of a more pure Númenórean bloodline for a while at least, because then they can play with that later and talk about the kind of the waning of that bloodline and the...
What, like in a sequel series?
Yeah, when would they do that?
5th season at least, maybe.
No? We can't be getting to...
No, you're right. We can't get to like the Kinstrife or anything.
Exactly,
you're right.
yeah.
I just don't want to see that yet.
I hear that.
I think it's
the Númenórean blood.
I think
runs
it's totally
true
happening, and I think that the Estrid is going to end up being
it's going to turn out that
Isildur's
she's
wife.
Actually,
That's kind of the only way I see this working.
I just don't see it.
I found this is going to sound harsh. I don't want to be too judgy, but like I didn't see the purpose of that entire storyline. Like maybe to show the threat that she was under and the decision she had to make. Yes,
sort of
that
symbolic
makes
of the rest of these men.
Absolutely of the desperation and the decisions that you have to make. Absolutely, that works with the core of good bad choices that we've been talking about. But the relationship between the two of them felt gimmicky, and it just really bothers me when something kind of borders on that. If there's a romance, I have no problem with it. Yeah. But for what purpose? So if we see her again, if it develops,
I almost feel like she has to be Isildur's wife. Otherwise, what's the point of the whole thing? Yeah. Like I just feel like there won't be.
I do like her representation
payoff there
as the conflicted. Yes, I had to take this mark. I had no choice.
Yeah,
because we've seen that, right? We've seen what happens to the people who don't take that mark. They get gutted right there by Waldrick.
And speaking of which, I have a job for her. Someone has to be sacrificed on the altar of Morgoth.
Oh no! Oh wow!
Right?
Yeah.
Somebody has to be sacrificed on the altar of Morgoth. Yeah.
And it will often be low men. We know that that's one of the things they do is they take the black-sailed ships, come and take people away to be sacrificed.
But Isildur also needs an heir in order for Aragorn to come.
He'll still have an opportunity to make an heir.
Yeah.
I mean,
after Estrid.
After
in fact,
Estrid's
Estrid's being sacrificed on the altar of Morgoth may simplify that process in some ways.
I
Right?
could actually see that plot line working, right?
Yeah,
because we now know that he's interested in connecting with somebody else. Great. But then when we have this sacrifice, it's somebody we're potentially willing to lose because that relationship wasn't really based on much.
Wasn't supposed to work.
Yeah.
What if that's the next time he sees her?
Yeah.
Ooh.
See, I think Aryan, if anybody, like there'd be some.
As a sacrifice.
Yeah.
Wouldn't
that be
I wasn't
great?
sure where you were going with that.
Yeah. You would. This isn't Game of Thrones. Jeez.
That's right.
Come on.
No,
Man, Matt.
Yeah.
Are we ready to
Dead or
leave
Nazgul?
Estrid or
Dead or
Nazgul? That's our option.
All of the human characters, dead or Nazgul.
Yeah.
Some will die well, some will die badly, but dead or Nazgul, 100% of the human population is destined for Nazguldom or death.
Yeah.
I will say the only
Texas.
reason I even care about Estrid is because Isildur cares about Estrid.
Yeah.
Agreed. Yeah.
Like, because she just gave me so much emotional whiplash. I never knew when to trust her. I never knew what to think. Was she really repentant? Was she just pretending to be repentant?
Yeah.
Was she setting him up? Or was she trying to make sure he wasn't set up? And it kept going so quickly back and forth.
The pacing of that I did find to be a problem, and I really did expect to see some Dutch angles show up in this storyline.
Right. Which is why though that whole thing. That's why the forgiveness stuff hits. Because even we don't know.
Right. We have to forgive her.
That does convey the state of doubt that they're in.
Yep.
They know that some of the wild men are victims of Adar.
Yeah.
They know that some, but how can they tell?
Yeah.
Clearly the binary question, do you have the brand on the back of your neck or not, is insufficient to judge. Are you trustworthy or not? Is it okay to ally with you? Are you going to stab us in the back or not? And we see in the end, Pelargir containing everybody who the trust has been extended, right? Forgiveness has been given, but that doesn't mean there aren't going to be problems. I think Hagen's going to be a problem, right?
So.
But here's why, and again, this is like my not just tendency to, but cheerfulness with thinking allegorically that came to my rescue here, because I didn't have a problem with it. I never had the feeling that Estrid was merely extraneous, and the reason is she represents a new population that needed representation.
Yes.
Right? We had, because the Southlanders
I
divided
can see that.
between like Bronwyn's crew,
right,
who resisted from the beginning and stayed true in resistance.
Yep.
And then those who became collaborators, either willingly like Waldreg or through duress, like many of the others we saw in the camp. And so the division among the Southlanders of the people of Pelargir and the wild men, and exactly a lot of these, like we didn't have any characters from season 1 who were in that position. So introducing a new person to represent the population of the wild men and the frankly marginalized position into which they have been placed and sometimes coerced, but maybe not fully coerced. How can you tell the difference between an Estrid and a Waldreg from the outside, right? And Hagen, I kind of like, I don't like Hagen, but I like the idea of the Hagen character in a sense, because he represents, like, he's the question mark.
Right.
Estrid, like, okay, I'm willing to believe Estrid is okay.
Yeah, let's assume
like,
that she
okay,
is
fine.
okay.
So she represents the wild men who have the brand, who got coerced into the brand,
Right.
but
And who are
like,
repentant
in her
and
heart,
wish
she's
to
not
be-
evil. She hasn't, she's not sworn to the darkness. Except she did swear to the darkness,
Right.
which is
But
awkward.
she didn't mean it.
Well,
But that's okay. She doesn't mean what she promises.
Yeah,
And
she can break oaths, right?
exactly.
Yeah.
You see the problem.
Uh-huh.
Like, it's all
Yeah.
complicated, right?
Yeah.
But then, and then there's Hagen, who is the question mark. We don't know him well.
No, we don't.
He was among the wild men, one of the leaders of the wild men. He seemed
Yeah.
like a bad guy, but now he's a leader and he seems okay.
No,
But we
he's a
don't.
bad guy.
I
He's
agree.
gotta be, yeah.
But anyway, the point is, he represents another.
Right.
If he and Estrid. So, thinking representationally in that way, like, what is there? Like, so when I asked myself, does Estrid have a role in this story? I was like, clearly.
Yeah.
We need.
And I
we
think
need
that's the future
somebody
we'll see
to
with
be
the
that.
next season. Her
Yeah.
representing the sort of repentant wild men, him representing the devoted to the evil wild men,
Or
and-
quick to return
or quick
to the evil.
return to the
Yeah.
evil.
Yeah.
I think we'll see that.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, are we not going to talk about the most important thing in the Pelargir storyline?
Which one?
The centipede of unusual size.
Oh.
Do we want to
Happy
talk
to.
about the creatures that live in the deep places, the one that we shall call Supper?
Sure.
Sure. What do we want to talk about that?
It's a very deep place where they find him, by the way.
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
About 2 feet
I just
deep.
want to get your thoughts on this, Corey.
Sure.
I really do.
Okay.
Because I thought this was just gimmicky and silly and a waste of time. So what were your
Go.
thoughts?
Okay.
How's that for a warm-up?
See, I'm
Like,
a
or
cynic
an
on
intro.
this, so
Yeah.
I've just got to like cold open right there.
I hear it.
Go for
I hear
it.
that. I'm this is my shocked face. Okay.
I'm so surprised that Alan is cynical about the centipede of unusual size.
Okay. In the context of episode 4, there are two relevant contexts that episode gives us. For that, in which frame we are invited, footnote, gently, and I think very likely wholly inadequately, to place this episode. Let me make the disclaimer once again. I'm not saying that I think this well executed. I found it a very awkward moment as well. And this is one of the many, many things in this show. Well, not many, just many things in the show that my first reaction to was
What?
That doesn't make any sense.
Right.
And then when I work through the themes of the episode and I think through,
that's why I'm coming to you. You're the guy who
I'm
can,
like, actually,
who can come
okay.
back and say this makes sense because
it makes sense.
X.
Okay.
So make this make sense for me.
Here are the two reasons that it makes sense. The two frames within which that episode places it. One, the episode is called Eldest. That's the Tom Bombadil and Ent episode.
Right.
Okay. So one of the themes of that episode is we're getting a lot of the crisis is Sauron and the elves. The crisis is what's going to happen with the men with he wants to forge the nine. And that episode gives us a note. Middle-earth has other denizens, right? Yeah. There are other things being impacted by this and things of ancientry. Like Tom Bombadil gives his speech, right? Yeah. Tom Bombadil has been disturbed from his rest and has gone out to Rune to investigate things. The Ents come charging in. They have been here since before the mountains were raised, and they are being affected, right? The creature from the deep places of the earth, I think they're well aware that a mud puddle in southern Gondor is not one of the deep places of the earth. Yeah.
I mean, honestly, I'm not sure how he ate enough to get that big, living there.
In the mud puddle.
In the mud puddle.
Lots of little bugs.
What's going to come along?
So,
lots of little bugs.
Taking Arondir's... Taking, for a moment, Arondir's word that this is one of the nameless things that lives in the deep places of the world under normal circumstances, the obviously logical conclusion is that something has happened to bring it out
to the surface
from the dark places, the deep places of the world. And once again, what has been happening, like what has just been going on in the episodes leading up to it, has been the tendrils of blackness on the map, right? The passage that I was reminded of was the one in the Shadow of the Past where Gandalf talks about Gollum being drawn to Mordor because Mordor calls all dark things to it, right? Okay. When Sauron is stirring again and his power is putting forth the call and all dark things are drawn and respond to the call of Mordor, which incidentally is quite near this particular mud puddle in southern Gondor, where this creature, which Arondir identifies as one from the deep places of the earth, has come. So we see two ancient good creatures, Tom Bombadil and the Ents, well, three technically, but two categories of creature, who have been stirred into action and kind of brought to the, brought into the story, whom we encounter in the story in that episode, to show the way in which this is a global story. This is not just a drama between Sauron and Galadriel, right? This is a global impact thing, just like the tendrils of black on the map also show. So that's, and in the middle of that, in between the two, the Tom Bombadil and the Ents, we get the random creature from the deep places of the earth, who given the black tendrils and everything, seems to be responding to the call that Sauron is stirring more things. Galadriel's convinced that that's happening. Again, this is also in the same episode of the Barrow-wights.
Right.
Another ancient evil that has been stirred up by Sauron. Certainly Galadriel is convinced of this. So we get the two, I forgot that the Barrow-wights were in that episode too. Yeah. We get two evil ancient things stirred up and two good ancient things stirred up. And so again, is it the impact of Sauron, the momentum towards the close of the age, like the Ents, more is threatened than your realm. Those are like the themes of that episode. That's the title of that episode. Those are the themes of the episode. That is the spot that the battle with the mud creature fills. Do I like it? No, I'm not a huge fan. Do I think it's awkward? Yes. Does it fit into that pattern? Yeah, it does. There you go.
All right.
Matt, your face through that whole thing.
What? I mean, okay, so I get the logic that that Corey's saying here, like that Sauron being about stirs up evil things. We know when he goes to Dol Guldur,
stirs up evil things.
Yeah, it brings up. We get the spiders and we get orcs going into the Misty Mountains.
Yeah.
I think where it did not work for me is where, it's basically dropping the line, like it's dropping the famous line. It's another one of those reference moments where it's like, oh, there's many.
It is in episode 4. Sponsored by the Fellowship of the Ring.
Right. Yes. Right. Exactly. Yeah. And where I think if they were to, actually be leaning into Sauron is stirring up evil things, like we could get a better line of dialogue that would fit that than
that's the thing.
So
if this takes a serious place,
yes,
agreed.
Then let's not do the let's call it supper.
Yes,
right.
Well,
that sort of makes it such a lighthearted
or even
moment.
say like it's just to me it's almost comical how it is. Like, oh, there's many nameless things in the deep places of the world. It's like we were 2 feet in the mud.
Yeah.
I don't think that qualifies.
But I think that's one of the examples.
There's a disconnect there.
And the example of execution, right? So like everything you said makes sense. Yep, tick. But you could have done better.
Totally.
There were other options. That
my argument is
not
that was well done.
Right. Yeah.
That was well executed.
Yeah.
My point is, again, what I do is I look at what happens.
Yeah.
And the question I ask is, what is the pattern?
Where does it fit?
What is the pattern? What do we see? What are we being shown?
Yeah.
Right. That this kind of analysis, this kind of interpretation of books, films, whatever. Fundamentally, that's what it is. You make observations, you see the pattern. As soon as I started doing that, as soon as I stopped cringing and rolling my eyes, which was my first reaction to that scene, and asked myself the question, what pattern does, and I think I even remember beginning to answer that to ask that question rather, like, how does that fit into the pattern? And as soon as I did, I was like, well, crap, it does. Okay.
Even if it's fit in poorly, even if
it's executed
awkwardly.
Poorly. Right. Yeah. No, it's executed poorly.
Okay.
I don't love that scene.
Yeah.
But that's the pattern.
Yeah.
That's the like that. Does it fit? Does it work? Yes, it does. Again, not well. I understand if you don't like it. I didn't love it myself.
Yeah.
On that lovely note, I think we are going to start wrapping up. But are there other subjects of Pelargir that you want?
We didn't talk about Kemen and the Numenor.
Oh God, trees. We got to talk about
Did you guys talk about Arondir at any point?
No, we got to talk about Arondir.
Goodness, the elf.
Okay, so Arondir and felling trees.
So like there were some
5 minutes
on Arondir.
No, we don't have to go 5 minutes. We can go a little on.
Yeah. There was some major deaths in this season that we saw. Some major characters, Celebrimbor and everything. One of them is Arondir's screen time that really
and his dialogue. He was joking about that in New York.
We need more Arondir.
He was joking about how he was like, you can tell that Arondir likes trees because 90% of his lines were directed to trees, in this season. He's not wrong.
Yeah, it's true.
And that means episode 4, he talked. And of course, it was very noteworthy. It was a very long string of lines for Arondir to make it all. But yeah, I agree. I don't think one of the obvious challenges with Arondir is he was the only romantic relationship in the show in season 1, and his partner died.
Yes.
With Arondir. Now,
and he's the only elf in the Southlands at this point.
Yes. Which I like because, again, representationally, who's Arondir?
Right.
The only non-Noldor elf in the cast.
Yeah.
Right. He is the representative of the Sylvan Elves. He is the representative of everybody who's not like the non-high. He's the only low elf.
Yeah.
And so why not hang out with the low men, right? I mean, like, but no, seriously, like he's in that class, right? That's his milieu in that sense, right? He's found his level, right? In the Southlands. Look how uncomfortable he is hanging out with the rest of them.
Oh yeah.
Right. I mean, he's standing like between Gil-galad and Galadriel being like I am very uncomfortable right now.
Exactly.
But
I just want to hide. Yeah.
But he also had a pretty good relationship with Galadriel. They were genuinely
I like that.
thrilled to like that was the first moment that I felt like I really connected with him emotionally.
Yes.
Because I felt the relief that he had seeing her and vice versa. So I did enjoy that moment.
Yeah.
And it was one of my favorite Galadriel moments because she went from her lowest of low points.
Yes.
And as soon as she meets Arondir, she's giving him hope.
Yes.
And I was like, that is good.
Very
Yeah,
Galadriel.
yeah.
Progress.
That was
That's
that's
We were
been
talking
my
about that
favorite
earlier.
Galadriel moment.
Yeah.
Yeah,
we
you
were
mean-
talking about
yeah.
it. Yeah, because I was
Yeah.
like, oh, there she is.
There she
Yeah.
is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now I see her.
Yeah. Anyway, so that was so I did really like that. But this is why I don't think he's destined to remain in their plot line. I think he is going to
Yeah.
return.
Yeah, I think he will.
But
or
I think
branch
it's
off in
important
some
that
way.
they know who he is.
Yes.
Branches,
Yes.
what you did there.
Yeah.
But
I hope he gets some new
Wow.
wardrobe too. He's been rocking that, Ent face
Yeah.
thing for
The
a
tree
while.
plate.
Yeah.
Green Man?
He needs,
the
he
Green Man.
needs
Yeah,
a-
it's got its
needs
probably
a new wardrobe.
Yeah, it kind of does, especially after the mud.
Gotta clean that thing.
Yeah, well, he did.
Yeah.
He did.
Oh yeah.
There's
I'm
even
not sure
body
how
of
the
water.
Ents
Yeah.
are
Right next to
feeling
him.
about him wearing wooden
Wood.
armor.
With their face on it.
Oh. Well, no.
I'm
See?
assuming that was dead when
Well, yeah,
you found
exactly.
it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
I will say, like the bar being set of have you ever chopped down
Yeah,
a tree?
right.
That's a
That's a tough
brutal.
bar
Yeah.
in Middle
I'm like,
Earth.
I mean, I've got arrows, so
and campfires
And campfires.
food.
Yeah.
and buildings. Oops. Like,
Okay, so what I liked about that is no, that's not a reasonable question.
No,
Yeah.
it isn't.
Like
Yeah.
the Ent wife was not in a
No.
A
good
reasonable
place.
She was not
state.
rational.
Yeah.
At that
No,
point.
Yeah.
that was. I mean, we see her. She is off. Like, that is. It's not fair.
Yeah.
That
No.
was not fair.
But she didn't want to be fair.
No.
She was in no
No.
position to
Exactly.
entertain
It
that.
was really
Yeah.
the drama of her offering forgiveness when where she began was. Give me a reason, man.
Yeah, right?
I want
Say
to
the right
pound
word
all
and
of
I
you,
will
and so
crush you to
I'm going to
dust.
ask you a trick question,
Yeah.
which you're never gonna.
Never
You're
gonna
either gonna
recover
lie to
from.
me,
Right.
or you're gonna give me an excuse to pound you. Either way, I'm pounding
winning,
you. So
yeah.
that's right.
Yeah.
And that's where she starts, and that's what made the forgiveness, I think, really poignant.
Yeah.
So
It's a great
with
scene.
Arondir, we didn't have a ton of time with him. We obviously
Yeah.
want a ton of time with him. We think he's probably going to return to the Ents. Where do you hope his trajectory is going? I mean, I kind of see him returning to the elves.
I do. Yeah. I don't know. I
They
I
wouldn't
see him almost
establish
being
this
on
strong
his
of a
own.
relationship
To
without
the Ents or to
to the elves.
Oh, to the elves.
I think he's returning to the Ents, but I also feel like
Yeah.
they wouldn't have
Yeah.
established this big of a
I-
relationship with
Maybe.
the higher.
I feel like he's with them now. Like it would be
Yeah.
kind of silly for him to immediately go back
Yeah.
to the
But he will go
Southlands.
back. I think he will
Eventually?
go back. Remember,
Yeah.
he's made an oath to protect that forest, right? He's promised the Ents that he's gonna.
I know what they say about oaths.
And but this is Arondir, not Estrid. So I think
I
he's
have
gonna have to honor that and come back,
got a
and he'll end up
theory.
being
I
the
have a one-word
foil of
answer.
Kevin.
A one-word answer.
Orifer.
Oh, yeah.
That's my one-word answer. Explanation of my one-word
Yeah,
answer, which I know was not
Which is gonna
illuminating
take
to
27
everybody.
minutes, but yes.
No, it won't. It won't. One of the participants in the Battle of the Last Alliance are the Thranduil's father, Legolas's grandfather, and the elves of Mirkwood, who are going to get slaughtered who in the book get slaughtered in the Last
Yes.
Alliance because
Precisely because they won't follow anybody's direction or command.
Right. They're really
because they
stubborn.
refuse to recognize Gil-galad's
exactly,
kingship.
exactly, and they are Sylvan elves.
Yes.
Right. So we have some reason to believe that more Sylvan elves will enter the story at some
Right.
point. We have a Sylvan elf
we have
on
a
hand who's at loose ends
representative.
at the moment.
Yeah.
And plenty of time still to meet the elves
Yeah.
of Mirkwood.
So
Yeah.
maybe Gil-galad sends him.
That's
Yeah.
That's what
my
I'm
idea.
thinking. Yeah.
Oh, look at
That's
that.
my
But
proposal.
he'll still end up being, I think, Kevin's foil down there and
Oh, yeah.
and
Oh, yeah.
preventing
Yeah.
the widespread destruction, or
Yeah.
at least getting vengeance for the widespread
Yeah.
destruction.
But if he gets sent, if say Gil-galad sends him to Mirkwood first,
Right.
and he goes to Mirkwood and
get
we
the
meet
other Sylvan
Orifer
elves, for
and
instance.
then he says to Orifer, okay, I gotta go check in on this forest. I'm
Right.
supposed to, and he goes down there and wasteland.
What forest?
Mm.
Right.
Right.
What forest?
Yeah.
Right.
Stumps.
Yeah.
Right. Then things get real in the
Yeah,
Southlands.
they do. Oh, they
Right.
do.
Right. Hey, Kemen, we've got somebody wants to meet you.
Yeah, right.
Right.
Give me a reason. Give me a reason.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah, that would be my guess
Yeah.
about, of a potential season 3 trajectory.
Well, also
Okay.
a nice bridge into talking about Kemen.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
we've
The
referenced
most punchable face in all.
Oh
of
my
it.
God, jerk face is my
Yeah.
new tagline for him.
Yeah.
Thanks for that, Matt. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
again, that kudos to the actor for that. I mean,
Yes.
because
Yeah.
He's the most improved character for me.
He really is.
Yeah.
And he's become hateable for a reason.
Yes.
As opposed to why
wasting
is he
screen
here?
time. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Why did they pull this guy from a Hallmark, rom-com, B grade rom-com? Why did they put him in here?
Yeah.
And now he's like, okay, I get it.
Yeah.
I don't like him, but that's okay. I'm not supposed to like him.
Right. Yeah.
No, that's exactly what
plays
you're supposed to
exactly
feel.
the most hateable. And he's so good at it.
And he facilitates all of the feelings we should have about the change in Numenor.
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
like, I don't like what's happening, and I want to punch you for it
Right.
specifically.
He's the Malfoy of Numenor, is what he is.
Yes.
That's really good.
Yeah.
Yeah. I do like there's that one moment though where you feel a little pity for him when his father
The relationship.
is telling him about the prophecy,
The breastfeeding
the
story?
breastfeeding
Yes,
story.
yes.
They've
And you
already
could just
covered
see him
that.
sort of
Don't worry.
Oh man, that is such a rough
Matt
moment.
really caught Corey off guard with that one during
Yeah,
a
I
Q&A.
Yeah.
That was
great.
It caught me off guard when he's. Yeah.
We were
I was like,
talking
I
about
feel
our
like that
affairs on, and all of a
detail-
sudden Matt's talking about breastfeeding.
Well,
and
I
I'm
said
like,
it's an.
What?
I said. I no. You make that sound way weirder.
You guys can
I
watch
said-
the Q&A
yes.
segment. We filmed an hour of it.
Yes.
Let's not
No,
revisit,
I just said
please.
how weird. I feel like that detail in the recap that Farazan gave could have been left out.
It could have been left out.
Like
That's true.
we didn't need to
Mama
know.
gave
the-
a
Say that it was
prophecy
when he
is
was a
fine.
baby.
Yes,
but
yeah.
That's a
Could
very
have been like
Yeah.
odd
Could
way
have
of
said
saying
When
it.
you were-
when you were a baby.
But
you were
a babe.
wee one,
Yes.
yeah.
Okay, so back to Kemen.
back
to
Yes.
Kemen.
That's
That
all
is
right.
Kemen.
So
that
yeah,
was pretty
yeah,
great.
the moment of pity, of
Yes.
sympathy
Yes.
for
When you
him.
could see him, his face quivering, and he's sort of
Yes.
like, ooh, and you just feel so sorry for him, and then of course you stop feeling sorry for him at all.
I didn't. Feel
But
sorry.
once again, we get the cycle of abuse.
Yeah.
Which also begins to form a motif,
Yeah.
right? Anticipating the cycle of abuse from Sauron,
Right.
With the Sauron issue,
Yeah.
right, of the cycle of abuse, which of course comes
All
out in
those
episode
daddy
7,
issues.
whereas the
Yeah.
Kemen thing comes out in episode 3.
Three?
Yeah,
Three.
right.
Eagle and the Scepter.
So yeah, we see him being treated horribly by his father, and then him immediately going and taking
Yes.
that out on other people,
Exactly.
right? And then it's later we get Sauron saying the same thing about
Right.
Daddy Morgoth, right? So, anyway, that's yeah.
Could have gone my whole life without Daddy Morgoth.
Daddy Morgoth.
That's not anything I needed to hear.
Daddy Morgoth and Kemen Jerkface. Got it. Yep.
Anyway, but so yeah, it sets that up in
Yeah, it does.
some ways.
Yeah, you're right.
Again, they're really good at this kind of like theming these motifs, connecting these motifs across.
Yeah, across the different storylines.
Even even if you think about it, like the Gaudrim are also in a similar position.
Yeah.
They are under a curse. Bad
Yeah.
things have happened to them. They act ruthlessly towards other people because they've been treated badly. Like
Right.
once again, you can see that
The cycle.
this kind of stuff comes up again and again. The wild men again.
Yeah.
We keep seeing. See, this is one of the, like once you start
Noticing.
noticing the patterns,
Right.
you see them all over the place.
That's fair.
Guys, have we covered Pelargir?
Well,
I mean,
the answer, as always, is
never.
no.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Not completely.
Right.
we didn't talk
Sufficiently,
about Arondir's
but not
miraculous recovery between 7 and 8.
Yeah. Right. Like we were
Like-
supposed to think he was dead. No, we
Yeah,
weren't.
I
None
saw
of us
so many
actually thought
people
he was
posted
dead.
online like, "Oh my God, they killed Arondir," and then
No,
like
they-
next
no.
episode, it's like, "I'm good."
It's only a flesh wound.
I don't know.
He just wants to disagree with me on
Well,
everything.
It's kind of the thing.
I genuinely didn't.
He wants
I
to
was
talk about it
surprised.
from all
I saw that
angles.
too.
That's
Yeah.
what it is.
And I was like, "Are you kidding me? He's obviously alive.
Well, right. They show him crawling away from the scene, which tells me he's going to
He's
live.
alive."
But
Have you ever seen
Is
an
he
action
actually
movie before?
crawling away?
If he's
I
not
don't-
supine,
I just
bleeding
watched it
out,
with
he
James.
lives.
yeah, and
I
you
swear.
didn't clock
he's
that.
moving away.
He's moving.
He's on his
but-
hands and he's on his hands and
It's
knees.
like
He doesn't even lie
slow
down.
motion, grimace on the face.
Of course, he's
Gut
grimacing,
and
just
roll.
stabbing the
Gut,
guts.
yeah, but it's very played as if it is a
It's
very
it's a
serious
potential.
wound.
Yes.
It's a big deal. But you know why it's a big
it's a
deal?
mortal wound, yeah.
No, it's not. Come on.
It's shot
That
as if
sword's
it is
this
immortal.
wide.
No, it isn't.
It went
Yes,
through his
it
entire
is.
body.
No, it isn't.
Yes, it is. Oh my
But-
gosh. Yes.
Why is it important to him? To Arondir. Why is that an important moment to Arondir?
Because it's his stomach that the sword goes in.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you for the obvious answer. I
what
love
in
it.
the show has led us to believe that Arondir is invested deeply in his stomach? Nothing. But
He
we
wanted
do
vengeance.
know.
You wanted vengeance. on that.
He is invested in something, and that's killing
Vengeance.
Adar.
That's true.
And he failed.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Adar stabbed him in the gut, and he's left desperately
So
crawling.
is it like
and,
a
and
Sith
he sees,
anger thing that keeps it like Darth Maul kind of thing?
cauterizes his own wound with hatred.
Yeah.
Well, his midichlorian count's off the charts.
Oh guys.
My answer to this, I have a 2-word answer to his survival.
100%
My 2-word answer is Beleg Cuthalion.
Which means
Beleg receives worse wounds than that, and not only heals himself right away, but heals himself right away and goes out on a cross-country march where he catches up to a group of orcs who are taking away Turin as a prisoner. Like, this is a thing. Like,
it would be nice to see that, if that is the thing, though.
Did you not see him afterwards walking around?
I did, yes.
Then what's the problem?
I guess the good news is all those elves are going to heal themselves. That entire army of Lindon is going to get up off the ground and be like, well,
okay, so Maggie,
did you see the one who did?
I know, hang on. So the problem I have with that, from a cinematic standpoint, and not knowing whatever you just said, how the heck am I supposed to glean that? Because all I saw was a mortal flesh wound, a crumple and a fall, and an attempt to tug at my heartstring. It didn't work because way did I fall.
You keep
for
calling
that.
it mortal.
I wasn't going to die. But.
I don't see a mortal wound.
Okay, it's an
It's a
offhand.
gut
Sorry.
wound. Again,
a gut wound.
My reaction
wound.
to
all the way through his torso.
It didn't come out the back.
But it wasn't shown.
No.
Hang on.
They didn't
come out the
show.
back.
It
They
wasn't
didn't show.
shown him jumping up and getting better. So there's just kind of this assumption that we're supposed to assume his storyline is at least affected. If I don't see that as important, if I don't see people crying or mourning or talking about him,
or he doesn't even
or
seem
I
like
see him get
phased.
up and move, that middle ground doesn't serve anything.
Like when they gather up all the leaders,
this
and
didn't
he's there.
stop me. Like I'm not gonna lose sleep over this one. But
I'm fine. No, again, my reaction to my immediate reaction. Again, I was genuinely puzzled when I saw people thought he was dead, because again, it's not because of like Tolkien knowledge. It's because I watch a lot of action movies.
Right.
I didn't
and
think
I was
he
like,
was,
no.
According to going to kill this guy.
According to the grammar of action
he
movies,
was dead.
he lived.
I didn't think he was. Shh. I didn't think he was dead. I was annoyed that they were trying to make me think he was dead.
There you go.
There was no need for that. So unless you're going to show me a recovery or a death, there was no need to make me think that he was dead.
I don't understand why you did.
Mostly dead.
He was very injured in body and in spirit because he was watching his enemy upon whom he had sworn vengeance walk away as he was crawling on the ground. That was
then he's
a bad
fine,
moment.
like 100% good to go from that point on. Like it feels like there are cut scenes or something.
Yes.
Like it feels
Again,
like
we
there
talk
is
about
something
cutting
on the
rooms
cutting room
Yes.
floor.
There
Which
are
is
refugees.
which is
wounded
entirely
refugees
possible.
limping along with them while he's marching
like,
perfectly fine.
Yeah. Like I mean, I at least expected when they said round up the leaders. I'm like, okay, if Arondir's there, then he's gonna be like, looking
on
rough.
On a stretcher.
Yeah.
Like, but that's actually one of the plausible. Like, there's lots of things that could be on a cutting room floor, right?
Yeah.
But that's actually one that really does make a lot of sense.
Galadriel
to me.
walks by, goes,
exactly.
"Oh, Arondir,
there would be
let me heal you."
There would be some, not even like the healing part, but like some reunion moment. Like there would be an opportunity to pull Arondir up from somebody to have that connection.
Gil-galad could have done it.
Right. There could have been something.
Yeah, Gil-galad could have with his ring. That's true.
And also,
now that
where
I think
did
about it, of course, Galadriel didn't have hers anymore at that
No,
point.
she would have had to hit him on
Elrond
the way
would have had
down from the cliff.
And then Adar.
If Gil-galad was there, I mean, he missed half the battle. So.
Exactly.
Well, he's where the need is greatest.
He's where the need is greatest, which was
Wherever
not
that
with
is.
Arondir because he was fine.
Yeah.
Well, he's gonna live, obviously. So he
all
doesn't
right,
get me.
I am gonna wrap us up. All right, this has been fun. Can you tell this is the last episode we filmed today?
A little punchy.
Just a smidge, but this has been so much fun. So thank you guys so much. Again, wish we had another whole day to do it, but wow, we'd be tired.
Yeah.
So round one. See you guys next season.
Yeah.
Sounds good. Thank you guys so much
More
for joining.
Arondir
Thank
next
you
season.
guys.
Yes.
All right, take care.
All right. Well, it's time for Q&A with Matt, Nerd of the Rings. Welcome, Matt.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, good to have you here. So our question here is from Diamedea, and she says, do you think the show is doing enough in the Numenor plot to set up the main cause of the civil war that leads to the downfall, that is, the fear of mortality? I can see hints of it in the decadence of this late period Numenor, and perhaps with the way Tar Palantir's death was treated, but I think a casual viewer might think the unrest is due almost exclusively to anti-elf sentiment. Of course, the reason for the anti-elf sentiment, as we know, is envy of the seeming immortality of the Eldar, but I'm not sure how well the show is connecting the dots there. Yeah, I mean, I would like kind of taking a step back from the question, kind of like the issue here, right, is about the kind of the pacing of the Numenor story and how they're handling that. And obviously it's a question. This is something that, you know, I was talking about earlier with James, and, you know, thinking about how they're shaping the Numenor story and the you know, the way they've compressed it and how they're able to kind of put that stuff out there. On the one hand, I think that it doesn't, they're not bringing the immortality stuff in yet, right? Very strongly.
Right. They have one scene with Farazan looking out at the sunset,
looking out to the west. Yeah.
That's the only real strong moment, which I was glad to see, because there hasn't been much.
Yeah, I was glad to see that too. I was also glad that it didn't go further. Right? If he had pivoted suddenly at that moment,
right?
And like, you know, and now, doggone it, I'm not immortal and I can't stand it any longer. Right. Like that would have been. It's too soon. I think in the process. But it does seem to me like a logical.
Yeah, it planted a seed. It planted a seed that they needed to plant. I think Numenor as a whole, kind of took a back seat this season. Which honestly I was okay with, because of the necessity of the Eregion story being front and center.
Yeah,
like it had to be. We got, you know, with so little Celebrimbor in season 1, you know, season 2, going into season 2, I was like, we need a lot of Celebrimbor.
Yes.
So, but now, you know, now that season 2's in the rear view, I'm kind of like, okay, now we need a lot of Numenor. Going forward.
And I think certainly at the very least, right, we're going to get the Celebrimbor treatment when Sauron is in Numenor.
Right, with Farazan.
With Farazan, yeah. So I would suspect that you might be frustrated again in season 3, only to find season 4 when the appetite for that is finally filled.
Yeah, but I think
if Sauron and Numenor is in season 4, which
that's my guess. Yeah, that's my guess. Like I assume we're okay to like speculate based on total book spoilers, but so my guess is season 3 concludes with Sauron going to Numenor as a prisoner,
being taken captive.
Season 4 is the fall of Numenor. Season 5's Last Alliance.
Yep.
So I think they can, you know, boost it up a bit and not have to cram it all into a single season like they did with Eregion this year. And, you know, start, you know, planting more seeds, getting more development on the Numenor and the mortality-immortality issue, and then really have that be the main thing of season 4.
Right. Yeah, I mean, if we think about the primary dynamics, like the anti-elf thing, I would have agreed with that assessment that many viewers will think it's just like anti-elf bigotry, basically. I would have agreed with that at the end of season 1. Right? When all we had was season 1, if, again, without knowing what they were going to do in season 2, we then think about like, okay, now we're going to start persecuting the faithful and everything. It would be, okay, well, on the basis of anti-elf bias, I guess.
Right.
But if you think about it, anti-elf bias, apart from unflattering elf-related comments about like the Palantir, right? It being an elf artifact and, you know, this elf trinket, you know, is your real queen, like that, those kinds of moments. Apart from those, for the whole rest of the season, elves never even come up.
Right.
So anti-elf sentiment is not a driving force. And certainly for the Kingsmen, like for Farazan and the Kingsmen, they never talk about elves the whole season.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah. So I don't feel that the anti-elf sentiment is the thing that's really kind of looming large. Instead, it's now all about our Farazan solidifying his power,
right,
and
yeah,
removing resistance.
yeah. Which I do think, and I think what kind of the question is getting at the heart at here, I think, because I kind of feel the same way, that things have escalated between the faithful and Kingsmen
Yes.
really quickly.
Yes.
To the point where I hope it dials it back before ramping up again, just because we're already rounding up faithful, and I'm like, whoa, that's like a Sauron and Numenor situation. So I think, and again, this is just my theorizing, but I think we're fairly soon might see a wedding between Farazan and Miriel, and
probably
that is going to both solidify Farazan's, legitimize his claim to the crown, and then the trade-off there is Miriel will go along with it in exchange for him stopping to persecute the faithful, and then it kind of has this stasis for a little bit.
Yes.
And then we maybe, I hope we can get some of that, that undercurrent of, animosity toward one another, but nobody's at outright war or anything.
And they're just increasing their power.
Yeah. And it's just like, it's all coming to a boiling point, when Sauron then does come and everything boils over.
Yeah.
I hope, because it just seemed so soon for it to boil over already.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh my gosh, are we going to start sacrificing people already?
Right.
Like,
we're not at Morgoth worship point yet.
Yeah.
But so it's but yeah, no, I hear that. I have to admit, I also was surprised in episode 8. I was expecting we would return to Numenor. I was guessing we were going to get a proposal. I thought that's where it would go.
Yeah.
After that, like when she's the queen of the sea, and the tides of fate have turned against our Farazan in that moment. I expected his counter to be, I'm going to marry you, right, so that your popularity becomes my popularity, and like basically say, look, she is the queen, my queen, now shut up, right?
Yeah.
Like I thought that might be his political move there,
right? But now I see it as like Miriel actually has a reason to go along with it because of the persecution happening.
That would give her, because that is,
because once she's
a really
in
good
favor,
question.
like I've said, like the Numenorians, they're a fickle bunch. They like cheer for whoever, like some signs or an eagle or whoever,
which is believable. Like I buy it.
They
knowing people,
but but when Muriel's obviously on the upswing when she survives the trial, and so I don't think there'd be much reason for her to go along with it, which is
what's her incentive to say yes to the proposal.
And it's kind of interesting. Obviously there's multiple versions. I kind of like they would never do this in the show, but the version where Miriel is like kind of hot on Farazan and is like totally good with all his actions and stuff. It's It's clearly not that.
Right. There is a Tolkien version of that story.
Yeah, which is crazy. Like it's such a why I much prefer the the unwilling, the faithful version of Miriel.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't think after she survives the sea trial, there's no reason for her to go along with the marriage. Whereas now you can see kind of the inroad there where they might go with that to make her go along with it.
Right. Right. No, I agree. The added leverage of marry me or I'm going to slaughter all these people.
Right. Yeah. It's a compelling argument, I guess.
It is.
It's not the good foundation for a healthy marriage. I don't think so much.
That's right.
But
that's right. Pro tip on marriage. Yeah. That's right. That's not a good way. Yeah. Do not attempt.
No.
But yeah. No, I agreed. It's and of course it puts Muriel in once again in a position where she sacrifices herself.
Yeah.
To save the people.
Right.
So that certainly does track. I
hope we get a lot more with Elendil and the faithful.
I
think the faithful need.
I feel like
more,
we were promised that in episode 8.
Yeah, I think they need more fleshed out. I think it does need more of that. Because we kind of get the idea that the faithful have more faith in like the Valar and stuff like that. But it's just kind of been a bit around the periphery so much in terms of gotten thrown around. But I think with the next season with Elendil going to Anarion, presumably there's going to be a large contingent of faithful there in the West. He's going to become Lord of Andunier.
Yes.
And then I think maybe we get more of a power, not struggle because Elendil's not going to seize the throne, but to show that the faithful aren't nothing, because right now they feel like this group of, 40 people that they rounded up one night. Whereas I think showing them as capable of pushing back a bit, even if they're still outnumbered, that they're not just pushovers, I think would
even
do
at
some
the
good.
least to prove that they're enough such that if you displace them to Middle Earth, they could establish a respectable kingdom.
Yes. Establish. Well, Pelargir's already established, crumbled, and now being reestablished.
Right. Yeah. Hinting at the Numenorean history that they've skipped, but yes, exactly. But I do agree with that. Yeah. And again, I think what they said in episode 8 about Anarion and him going west and stuff certainly suggests to me that they well, no, it does more than suggest. It's one of those things that, like, if we don't get that, if we don't get much more of the faithful in the west with Anarion and stuff, I will feel that I was deceived in episode 8. So I don't think they'll do that. I mean, that they their episodes have seemed to kind of follow through on the promises in that way.
Yeah, I would think. I don't think you can send Elendil just to find a Narion, and like a dozen guys hanging out. It's like, all right, we're a small team, but we're ragtag and we're gonna pull it off. By golly.
Yeah, I can't imagine that's gonna be like. Yeah, it'll make the last alliance a little bit of a letdown.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes, the armies of Gil-galad and the 5 of us.
Yes.
Right. Not exactly an alliance.
Sauron's got 20, but we've got heart, so let's do this.
Exactly. Yeah. No. I agree. I think there'll be more there. But what I suspect now is that the immortality thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think that the immortality thing is not going to be a thing until Sauron makes it a thing. I think that what we saw was him thinking about it, and what he's thinking about. The term I was using, the term I've used before, is that he's when he reaches the top, when he achieves the pinnacle of power that he knows of, what he confronts is humans have a glass ceiling.
Yeah.
Right. And
which is what they planted the seeds for with his looking west.
Exactly. In that speech. And it makes sense in that moment, right? To feel like, it's still like there are no more worlds left to conquer thing. Except he's like, actually, there are other worlds left to conquer. We just can't.
Yeah.
Right. And it's not a huge deal. It's not defining his life. He's not gonna, dedicate himself to eradicating death or anything like that. He's not rebelling against the Valar. But the notion is there. The frustration that, like, I achieved my wildest dreams. I'm now the king of Numenor, and yet, what do I have?
Right.
What does it mean? What does it matter?
I'm gonna die.
I'm gonna die.
X number of years. Yeah.
Exactly like that. He's had that moment. It's an understandable moment. Again, it's not defining him. It's never come up again, as we said since. But so I think that's basically what we saw in that scene is going to end up being an ember that Sauron's gonna blow and gonna breathe life into.
I think. Sorry.
Yeah.
I was gonna say. I think what could be a really interesting opportunity to, put some more oxygen on that fire would be when Farazan inevitably, again, just theorizing what I think could happen.
Yes.
Is Farazan leads the Númenóreans to help.
Yeah.
To help in Eriador and
Eregion. Too late for Eregion.
Yeah. Eregion. Yeah, it's toast. But yeah, so when he goes to help the elves and bails them out, some conversation, some phrase that an elf says hits him the wrong way. Sauron witnesses it, and that's all he needs to know, like, this is what's gonna push this guy's buttons.
Yeah.
And like, I surrender to this guy, and Farazan takes him back, and then
I suspect
that's all she wrote.
Yeah, the Númenóreans in Eriador is going to go spectacularly badly.
well, in the sense that they'll defeat Sauron's armies.
Yes. Yeah.
Right. And in fact, pull everybody's biscuits out of the fire.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as but the diplomatic situation,
Yeah.
I think is likely to be horrible.
Right.
In both directions.
And I think, it would be interesting, I really hope they get like the splendor of Numenor and like just this overwhelming mighty force that's described in the books where Sauron's armies abandon him.
Yeah.
It's so cool.
It is so cool.
And he has no choice at that point. I mean, he's still playing his cards, but he has no choice but to go as a prisoner at that point because everybody's abandoned him. But if we see that, and we see if it came to blows, the elves aren't going to defeat the Numenorians. So what choice do they have? But okay, well, I guess we'll let you take Sauron because you're just going to slaughter us if we don't. And we know this is going to be bad.
Right.
But we have no choice. And it's like a Farazan showing his might. He feels mighty over the elves, but he still knows he doesn't have that immortality like they do.
Yeah. And his resentfulness of that will lead him to act more high-handedly even than he would appear. Definitely. Yes. This is one of the things that I really liked about the reference to the King's Armada. Because I was like, okay, I don't want Ar-Pharazôn to come to Middle Earth with a Muriel-sized army.
Right.
Like a Muriel and Elendil-sized army.
No, we need more than 3 ships.
We need more than 3 ships.
Yeah.
Right. We need to, and I was like, Armada? I'm like, now we're talking. Let's build an Armada for Ar-Pharazôn by all means.
Yes.
Right. I mean, again, not that I approve of the cutting down of the trees and everything else. I'm just saying,
story-wise,
we want the big bad Numenor, and it sounds like we're getting it. So that's
no actual trees are harmed in the filming, so we can build as many boats as we want for this.
That's right. And it's not that I'm looking forward to the destruction of the Entwives and their gardens. I'm just saying, I think that it's.
But you kind of are
a little bit.
It's,
kind of am.
And it's like when. Gosh, when I was talking to Charlie Vickers for an interview, when I was talking to him, I said how much I loved, seeing the moments where Sauron just gives up the diplomacy and just like slaughters people. When he kills like the one named orc, just without a thought.
Yes.
I'm like, I love that. Like, it sounds sadistic,
right?
But I love it because of what it means for that character.
Yes.
And it's part of the story that you have to see if you're gonna adapt that character, I feel like. And it's the same thing with, the destruction of trees. Like, yes, I would much rather see trees up, but
we're not
It's a great part of the story.
We're not pro slaughter of the Entwives. We're not pro deforestation in principle, but I agree. It is fun to see them handling that kind of story. And as JD and Patrick have said, the Second Age as a whole is a tragedy, and it tends towards tragedy all along. So that's
First Age is no picnic either, honestly. I mean, it's kind of all.
Frankly, neither is the Third Age.
I was gonna say it's all kind of.
Yeah, I mean they.
That ending of Lord of the Rings, though, man, that's.
Well, that's the thing about all of Tolkien's ages. Right?
Yeah,
it's like misery, 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 but a good ending.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
Like that's
what makes the ending so sweet. Though,
yes.
Is all the misery you go through in the meantime.
Yep. Yep. Yes. Centuries of tragedy, followed by an unanticipated catastrophe. Repeat.
Yes.
Yes. Exactly. Yeah. Well, so I do think for folks who are, I think some people might be feeling a little like impatient with a Numenor story.
Yeah.
Part of that I think may be because, as you said, the Numenor story, we got less of it.
Yeah.
What we got I loved what we got this year.
I liked what we got this season much better than in season 1. Like, if anything, I think we got too much Numenor in season 1, or at least, too much kind of not that wasn't contributing to what is to come, and just kind of, going on little little side adventure, like side quests in a video game. You know, it felt like a Numenor side quest rather than the main mission.
For the, guild badge and
yeah. It was like, we'll get our, our Southlands bucket list trip off, scratched off or whatever. But yeah, I much more enjoyed the season 2 stuff that kind of built toward, not just Numenor as a whole, but Elendil especially, I feel like had some great moments this season where he started taking shape as the character that we're, inevitably going to be cheering for big time in the last alliance.
Big fan of Elendil and Miriel.
Yeah.
Both in the season.
Yeah.
I mean, they're developed.
And Farazan too. Like, again, it's a bad guy who does bad things, but like, that's part of his story, and that's what I want to see. So
I will say, if there's one thing that I would have liked to see more, it would have been a little bit more, like, give Tristan Gravel more lines. Farazan doesn't talk very much at all in this season. Like, think of the number of times he's just sitting there doing that really quite wonderful evil grin.
Yeah.
That that sinister look.
Like, I'm up to something.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
that's because he has Belzegar for a hype man now.
Yeah, exactly.
So
he doesn't have to say anything. He just sits there, and then he's got, Kemen to say dumb things and Belzegar to say smart things. And,
yeah. And Belzegar to start chanting like, hey, Farazan, woo, right?
Yeah.
Right,
and he does everything else silently. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, there's really, it struck me in episode 8.
Yeah.
I was like, when was the last time Farazan opened his mouth?
Yeah.
I mean, he rarely does anymore. And that's interesting, just to see him turn into, like, as soon as he's become a kind of figurehead.
Yeah.
And it's not that I think he's become passive. Everything about his, Tristan Gravel's non-verbal acting suggests that he's absolutely the one behind everything.
Yeah.
And yet we don't see it. Anyway, so that's one thing that I think is kind of interesting and will make the Ar-Pharazôn Sauron season very cool.
Yeah. I am very much looking forward to that, especially after seeing Anatar and Celebrimbor.
Yeah.
The way the two Charlies played off each other was great.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think Charlie and Tristan is definitely something I'm very much looking forward to.
Agreed.
Again, it might be 4 years off at this point, which is kind of a bit of a bummer.
We'll see.
That it could be that far. We
It
might get a taste of it in season 3.
Right.
I do hope Farazan has fewer breastfeeding stories about his wife and kid, though. That was
one was too many.
One was too many. I think I could do with fewer, maybe. Yeah.
Right.
I felt awkward in that moment.
Yeah.
I was like, I feel like you could have left that detail out. Like, just once when you were a baby. I won't say when, but when you were a baby. Don't know where to go from there, do you?
No, I don't.
No,
but,
yeah. There's no good segue.
No, I was, here's what I'm thinking. My own response to that scene is that it felt symbolic, like almost allegorical, like why he's bringing up this thing, and especially the way in which Kemen is like the representative of the new Numenor, right? The son of Farazan. Like, he's the Numenor that Farazan is creating, right? And, who is trying to please Farazan and gain favor and increase his own power and everything, and feeling inadequate and uncertain. And it's lots of ways. And I mean, all season long, Kemen really kind of mapped onto not just the King's Men, which his name practically is, but that he, like, this whole, modernity in Numenor, leaving behind the old ways.
Yeah.
And in that moment, it was, there were a couple things about what he said that kind of twigged my, like, this sounds like symbolic language. Like I'm and I'm trying, was the breastfeeding thing, did that feed into it? Because the image is a very, like, not just concept of mom and baby, but like Madonna in child, like kind of thing that you would see on a symbolic statue. Many, Madonna and Child statues, show Jesus breastfeeding and stuff. Anyway, I'm not saying that Kevin is Jesus. I'm just saying that I think that might have been one of the reasons why I immediately began thinking in those kinds of symbolic terms in that moment. That I'm like, what is he trying to communicate here? Is he just trying to make both Kemen and us feel uncomfortable?
I mean, he succeeded in that.
Yeah. Well, that is interesting.
So apparently he didn't, because then he ships Kemen off, so I presumably he didn't tell him what the prophecy was.
Yes.
That his mom said.
Yes. Yeah. And that's the other thing, like his link to, the prophecy about what like Kemen as the new Numenor will become, and this sort of vision for the future and everything, which he's not yet telling Kemen about and whatever. But the shipping him off, the way that he becomes the extension of our Pharazôn in the, it's time to ramp up from Numenorian benefactors to Numenorian exploiters of Middle-earth. So Kemen now is going to, goes and becomes the face of that, right? So he becomes that extension of our Pharazôn because that's kind of Kemen's, the job of Kemen's character, right? But yeah, I will be really interested to see. I'm hoping they don't just leave that. I'm hoping we come back to that.
Yeah.
That odd moment of the mother's prophecy. I hope we find out what the mother's prophecy is.
I hope it's not a flashback. That's all I'll say. I hope we can just leave it.
Hearing about it was awkward enough.
Yeah, it was awkward enough. Yeah. Please don't. I will say, in terms of Kemen, like I've said this multiple times now, but he was a character that I couldn't stand in season 1 because I felt he was kind of pointless. But then in season 2, I couldn't stand him because he was serving a purpose, and like it was an evil purpose, which was a very big improvement for a character that I could not care less about in season 1. But like, I think, in terms of characters that have improved in my mind, Kemen is up there because he's fulfilling a role, like you said, of and he just looks so punchable.
Totally.
While doing it.
Yes. So this is one of the places that I wonder, thinking back on season 1, right? And ways in which the pacing and presentation of season 1 could have been different. The fact that they gave what felt like almost equal time to all the characters and all the stories in order to introduce everyone. And that's a very natural impulse in season 1, right? But I feel like in retrospect, that might've been a mistake.
Yeah.
Because we didn't need Kemen in season 1. He didn't have a purpose.
I think he could have been introduced in season 2. And
absolutely. If we had discovered, if our Pharazôn had pulled a son out of the crowd.
Right.
Or even we just saw him and he didn't say anything. We weren't asked to invest in him at all.
Yeah.
I think it would have been fine. I mean, the business of his, sort of relationship with Aarion, which got kind of dropped. It wasn't necessary.
Yeah.
Anyway, I just he's one of a couple characters like that.
Yeah.
That I think we could have
been a season 2 expansion instead of a
because he really didn't have,
much to do.
No, there were very few roles for him to play because again, he's the king's man.
Yeah.
There was no king yet. Well, okay, technically there was the old king, but still,
yeah.
He didn't have, like, we needed not only Isildur, but we needed Valandil and Antamo, right, who dies, right?
Oh, right.
They all played roles. They were all important, and we can see immediately the connection that we established with Valandil paid off really well. To make him the face of the martyred faithful.
Yeah.
Right, and that was great. But maybe Maybe could have held off on Kemen and given us more of something else that everyone loved.
Yeah.
Like the Harfoots. That's what I'm thinking that Matt was going to. I'm just taking words out of his mouth right now. But yeah, we could have had more Harfoots.
I think we're done here. Is that how we want to cut it off?